In America, we can never agree on just about anything. Is cereal cold soup? Is water wet? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? We must really have intellectuals in this generation. But while there are many split issues in America, there is one that has more people misinformed more than any other. Confederate flags and monuments. In June of this year, the Confederate flag was finally banned from being flown over NASCAR races. 1 month after, the flag was already seen flown over 2 different races. Andrew Jackson, Confederate soldier and 7th American president, can be seen monumented here in Missouri. Nathan Bedford Forrest can be seen monumented in many different areas, including his own park. If you go see the grand tourist attraction for yourself, you may be lucky enough to see people defend it like it's the Holy Grail. Now, the Civil War had a very high impact on our country, but that still doesn't answer the question for today. Why is the Confederacy so supported by America? In order to answer this question, we will first look at the history of the Confederacy, then we will talk about secession, and finally, racist intent. The Confederacy were 11 southern states that seceded from the Union in 1860. They started their own separate government and waged war against the Union in 1865. Now, some things to keep in mind is that the CSA was never a country. In order for that to happen, they needed to be recognized as one first. They were instead considered a breakaway state. Secede means to formally withdraw from membership of a federal union, allegiance, or political group. Defeat means to win in battle or contest. The CSA lost the Civil War. There were many reasons why they decided to secede. An article on the Civil War written by Adam Augustine states that since the Confederacy, an article written by Adam Augustine states that since the Confederacy was irretrievably threatened by the election of Abraham Lincoln, 7 states in the Deep South, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, seceded for the following months. 4 states write their intentions in the Declarations of Causes, different documents written by Georgia, Mississippi, Texas, and South Carolina that try to justify the secession of the southern states. When reading these documents, they make it very clear that the expansion of slavery was a main objective. When the North refused to enforce the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, an act that forced fugitive slaves going north be returned to the South, they were outraged and turned against the federal union. The icing on the cake was when Lincoln and his abolitionist views got elected, in Texas being dissatisfied with the federal military protection. A problem that can be seen with this info is that the misinformed statement that the Civil War was not about slavery. An article written by Jonathan Clark states that 2/3 of tariffs were being paid by the South. Because the Union was so focused on the evolution of industries, they tried to protect the industries from low-price imported goods while at the same time increasing the price of imported goods from the South. But this is also about slavery. You see, the Southern economy was heavily rooted in imported goods. The tariffs made it hard for the British to pay for the imported goods. Those imported goods were cotton that were exploited from plantations. In fact, more than 7/10 of Mississippi's Declarations of Causes is based on slavery. The Southerners thought that African Americans were inferior to them. They seceded to keep their outdated economy based on slavery, opposing the northern industries. So now that we know about reasons for secession, let's talk about Confederate ideals. This is what they wanted their country to be. They believed that we should have limited democracy, restricting voting only to people who own land. You see, we've talked about Confederate flags, but you know one we haven't talked about? Red flags. That is a big red flag. That is a big no-no. They also wanted to limit our freedom of speech, censoring anything that would advocate for the abolition of slavery. Now, can anyone tell me what color this flag is? I'll wait. Oh, I'm talking to a camera. That is a red flag. Now, they also wanted to limit freedom of press, threatening and banning any papers that went against their ideals. And yes, that is also a red flag. Now that we know what their country wanted to be, let's talk about modern day. We still see many of Confederate flags and monuments that commemorate the history of the South. Ladies and gentlemen, these statues were not built to be symbolic of our history. They were built to show the systemic racism and oppression in this country. Let me explain. Nathan Bedford Forrest, a man who made millions of dollars in slave trade, in the original Grand Wizard of the KKK, can be seen monumented in the state capital of Tennessee. Now, this statue wasn't built in the late 1800s or the early 1900s. No, this statue was built in 1970 during the Civil Rights Movement in the assassination of Martin Luther King. Another example comes from Jeffrey Robinson's speech on Confederate monuments. He explains that there were different spikes in the timeline when Confederate monuments were being built. One of them was from the late 1800s to about 1921. What was happening during this time? Black people were being lynched by the hundreds. Along with that, white supremacists burned down Black Wall Street in 1921. Jeffrey Robinson explains that these statues were built for people who had done nothing other than to fight to maintain white supremacy. The second spike was from 1947 to 1968. While this was also a time of segregation and oppression, it was also the time of the rise of the Dixiecrat Party. Now, a guy named Strom Thurmond brought back the Confederate flag, which had not been seen since 1865, and brought it back as a symbol of segregation. A quote from Roy Harris in 1951 says, "The Confederate flag is coming to mean something to everybody now. It means the heart throbs of the people of the South. It is the cause of the white race and the symbol of the white people. The Confederate flag means segregation." With all of the info that has been given today, we must come to a conclusion. Should we be openly supportive of the Confederate flag in America? And well, that's not something I can really answer for you. We have the freedoms to express how we feel in America, and that's what makes it so cool. What you really have to ask yourself and remember is how far your freedoms then become hate. And believing in something so evidently hateful really says something about your character. As I conclude this speech, I would like to end on a very important quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that really shows the problems that we have in America. "There is nothing in all of the world that is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Thank you.